Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So we go into this week 4 matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons in our minds thinking, hey, here's a vulnerable team. They're reeling. They're coming off of an ass whooping last week. They're making all kinds of changes to the staff and how they do things. They look like food. And you're not wrong if that is your assessment of the Atlanta Falcons. But what you also would be doing is underestimating the any given Sunday nature of the National Football League. And to take it a step further, we were just the Atlanta Falcons a week ago. How soon some of you forget that we were sitting in their exact position and seat just a week ago, chomping at the bit to get rid of a nasty taste out of our mouth of a really horrible performance that we wanted to put behind us. Now, we're not the Raiders. You're not inviting some chump to your home that you can beat up on and get right against, right? However, it doesn't change the fact that the Falcons are going to look at this opportunity against Washington as a chance to get back in the right frame of mind, to get back into the left-hand column and to right a lot of the wrongs that happened a week ago. They are who we were last week. And I watched that Falcons game over again last night. I watched it on Sunday when it happened live. Was shocked at how that game went, to be honest with you. Went back and watched it in greater detail just to see what the hell actually went wrong. And are these things easy fixes? I'm here to tell you that a lot of what went wrong last week are easy fixes. This is a dangerous team. And when you look at the Falcons and their totality, okay, Michael Penix Jr. getting a lot of flack right now. He's only started 6 NFL games, so people need to pipe down, okay? This is what you go through with a young quarterback. These are the growing pains that come with a young quarterback. He's going to have games like he did last week. But he's talented. And, Rio was making jokes about him being, people are saying he's the Black Tua. His arm is way stronger than that of Tua Tagovailoa. They are not the same. The only comparison that they have is that they're both left-handed. That is where the comparisons start and end, okay? To me, Penix is super talented. He's a guy that can hurt you with his arm as well as his legs. And yes, he doesn't use them as often as he probably should, but he's a guy that wants to hurt you from the pocket. Drake London is a problem. I like our corners against Drake London. I like the physicality of our corners. I think we should be able to handle him, but he's a problem nonetheless. Darnell Mooney is healthy for the first time this season, and now he's played in games. He wasn't 100% healthy. This is the first week Darnell Mooney has not been on the injury report. The Falcons are excited about him finally being fully healthy, able to practice without any limitations. That's a big part of their offense. Darnell Mooney, if he gets it going, he's a problem that can hurt you. And he was open quite a bit last week. He had a couple of drops, some errant throws that if Penix tightens up, guys were open last week. And Penix was just off. He was flat-footed. He was under duress. You could tell he was flustered by the moment. They didn't take advantage of some opportunities, and things just kind of got away from them, and it snowballed. They missed some kicks early in the game, and they never really truly recovered, and it felt like Penix was pressing. But they got guys that can get open. I don't have to tell you about Kyle Pitts. He's a problem. And he hurt us last year in the game, and he's fully capable of doing it again. We limited Brock Bowers. That was really fun to see. But let's not fall into the trap of thinking, oh, we fixed all of our tight end woes. This guy is a different animal. He's similar to Brock Bowers in the case that he can run like a tight end. He looks like a tight end. He can hurt you like that. But Brock Bowers was sporting a knee brace and wasn't himself. This guy is fully healthy despite being on the injury report. Practiced fully today. We know what we're getting. We got to try to slow down Kyle Pitts. And then Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier pose a whole set of different problems. That offensive line that they have is better than the one we saw last week, better than the one we saw against the Giants, probably more on par with the one that we saw against the Green Bay Packers. Doesn't mean we can't have success, but it doesn't. What I'm telling you is we're not going to just destroy these guys. I think we'll have our opportunities to have our way with them, but it won't be where I just go into the game. Last week I was disrespectful of the Raiders offensive line because I knew their line wasn't any good and I knew we could have our way with them. I don't see us just absolutely outright dominating the Falcons up front, but I do think we're still better up front defensively than they are offensively, especially with some of the injuries that they have to their front. So I like us in that spot, but it's still going to be a tough challenge, slowing down Bijan Robinson, slowing down Tyler Algier, and not allowing them to, especially Bijan hurting us in the pass game as a receiver, in the screen game, in the swing game, out of the backfield, him getting option routes out of the backfield, that kind of thing. We have to limit his explosion and his big play capability. Again, we've given up a ton of big plays this season. Do not sleep on the Falcons. I'm giving you a lot of behind the enemy lines type of conversation right now, but I just want to stress to you that this Falcons team is dangerous. Do not sleep on the Atlanta Falcons in this game, assuming that, oh, they got blanked by the Panthers last week. That's family business. If you don't know about that business, stay out of that business. That's not our business. You don't worry about what's going on in their divisional family business. You just worry about the task at hand. This is a dangerous team, fully capable of taking care of business. If we don't go in there and check all of the boxes, dot all the I's and cross all of the T's. I just wanted to set that straight as we get into behind enemy lines a little bit later on the show, and we can kind of further expound upon some of this stuff. But I just wanted to set the tone for today's show. The Falcons are not to be slept on. This is a very winnable game, but you got to go in there and take it. They're not going to just give it to us. And every time we play the Falcons, this shit is close. No matter how good they are, no matter how good we're supposed to be, this shit is close every single time. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the game, in the show as well. As we go in other news, we heard from the two coordinators as today was Coordinator Thursday. We'll talk about what was said. I thought Joe Whitt Jr. had one of his best press conferences he's ever had, and there was a lot of insight to be gained. And his press conference was 2 times as long as that of Cliff Kingsbury. So a lot that was said from Joe Whitt. And then we'll talk about what Cliff Kingsbury had to say as well. But before we do any of that, let's check the injury report for both teams. And we start with the good guys on Sunday. No surprises here. The injury report has shrinked significantly. Those 4 names that were all non-injury related are gone and removed from the list. So it went from 12 to 8, which is what we talked about yesterday. And thus, the 5 guys that were DNPs yesterday were DNPs again today. Again, none of them surprises except for Bill. I'm getting a little bit more nervous. And again, this could still be precautionary. He could practice in full tomorrow and be ready to go Sunday. But him not practicing at all today does make me a bit worrisome. I wanted to see limited today at least. And the fact that he was DNP. Now, word out on the street from all the beat reporters that were out there said that he was on the side field with, pads on, whatnot, working with the training staff. So that's a good sign. But to not be a part of practice still worries me a bit as for his status, knowing that there's probably no Terry, no Noah in this game, knowing that you're going to have to lean on the run game. Not that Chris Rodriguez and J-Mac can't handle it, but do we really want Chris Rodriguez and J-Mac handling it? No, we don't. So let's hope that Bill can play this Sunday and that they're just taking it easy on him during the course of the week, knowing that they're going to need him on Sunday. But John Bates, Noah Brown, Percy Butler, who also was working with the training staff but was not in uniform. So it feels like Percy's a little bit further away than Bill is to getting back on the field. And Terry McLaurin all out of practice today. And I don't think any of them are going to play on Sunday. So that's not a surprise. Trey Amos full today. Great sign. Feel like he's going to be removed from this injury report. He probably won't even have a status come Friday afternoon. So that's good news. Jaden Daniels limited again. I think he's trending towards playing. Again, we will see. And then Colson Yankoff, full participant. Again, I think much like Trey Amos, he'll be removed from the injury report and not have a game status because he's going to play. So the guys that we expected to continue to progress have done that. But the guys that are going to look like they're going to be out of this game look like they're going to be out of this game, except Bill. We really got to keep a watchful eye on him. That's the one right there. That's the one that could tilt this thing in our favor. If he can go, I feel really confident. If he can't, I'm a little nervous because I don't want to be relying on Chris Rodriguez and J-Mac to carry the load at the running back position. So let's go from the good guys to the ops. And really, the same thing exists here. The same guys that didn't practice yesterday didn't practice today. I already told you the big name here is A.J. Terrell. We know he's not playing in this game. I knew when he injured his hamstring against the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, it was a serious one. And as a corner, you injure your hamstring, you're out for at least a month, basically. So he's not playing in this game. And that's the one that really impacts them defensively. James Pierce Jr. was very active in the Panthers game, was very active against the Vikings. He's a problem. He's going to be fine. He's going to play in this game. And then Kyle Pitts was limited yesterday, full participant today. That's a guy that is definitely someone that can hurt us. I expected him to play, never expected him to be out of this game. So there's nothing really to see there. Everybody that is practiced in some capacity this week for the Falcons, I expect them to play. All the guys that haven't practiced to this point, I don't expect to play. So they had one addition to the injury report, Josh Woods, inside linebacker, but it's non-injury related. So again, not anything to see there. So AJ Terrell is the big story here, and he's not going to play. So that is a big boost for the Commanders. Now, you get to the press conferences today, and we're going to start with Joe Whitt Jr. and what he had to say, which was a lot. So he started his press conference by talking about the things that he really liked from the game on Sunday versus the Raiders in Week 3. And he started with the defensive line and gave a lot of love to Daron Payne, said Daron Payne graded out the highest of any player this season and the highest of his career as with them here in Washington. So I talked about Payne and the Payday Payne thing and new drop coming for Payday Payne. He's been exceptional and he was fantastic. We watched the film. Shout out to the mob. And I talked about how good he was on Sunday. He was exceptional. He talked about J.K., Javon Kinlaw, for those of you who aren't in the know, and D.A., Dorrance Armstrong, as also guys that really graded out high in the game against Vegas and were really disruptive and destructive in that game. Facts. He also gave Marshawn Lattimore and Trey Amos some love in the secondary, said those guys were phenomenal, which they were, and I said as much. You guys are too hard on Marshawn Lattimore. I'm going to continue to ride for him because I think this guy's played really well this season, and he is continuing to show that he can be the Robin. I don't think he's Batman at this point. I think that's Trey Amos who's Batman, but he can be a hell of a Robin at this point of his career. I still think he has the ability to be what Darius Slay was for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm riding with Marshawn Lattimore, even in the face of a lot of you trying to run him out of town. And then he gave some love to B-Wags. And, you know, obviously B-Wags with the 2 sacks, the pressures, just being around the football. He was exceptional in this game as well. He gave some love to their run defense, which I've been lauding and praising all season long. I thought they would be good stopping the run this year. I said that this was going to be one of the strengths of this defense, and it has been. And he said specifically stopping the run on first downs. And I talked about the third down defense yesterday, and I said, you want to know why this team is so good on third downs? It's because they're winning on early downs. First down runs have been shut down by this Commanders defense, and Joe Whitt Jr. talked about that. He talked about a stat that they keep within the building called turnbacks. And he said they had 26 of them versus the Raiders, which he said is insane. Like, that is a ridiculously high number. Turnbacks are when you force the ball carrier to turn their helmet towards their own end zone, right? So they turn back around, because if you get the ball, there's no reason for you, if everything is going the way that it's supposed to, there's no reason for your helmet to be turned facing the opposing end zone, right? Your own end zone. There's no reason for your helmet to be facing that way. Either it's facing towards one of the 2 sidelines, or it's facing towards the end zone you're going towards, right? up the field. There's no reason for your face to be facing that way unless you're like a receiver coming back to the football. But he's talking about behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, that sort of thing. And we constantly were in the backfield affecting the running back, the quarterback, etc. Um, Brock Bowers catching the football, things of that nature. We did a tremendous job. So he talked about that. He also harped on the fact that there's been too many explosives given up this season. He said that they've given up 9 explosives, and these are plays that I don't know if they, what the yardage cutoff for them is for an explosive. Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 40? We've given up big plays this season, though, right? And he said they've given up 9 this season, 3 against the Raiders in the game. Obviously, the first play of the game was an explosive. The one to Trey Tucker late for the touchdown was an explosive. And there was another one to Jacoby Myers that he caught and ran with. That was another explosive. So I'm assuming those are the 3 explosives that he's referring to. He said 3 every week, 3 on average per game is not what we do. It's not okay, and they have to clean it up. And he also said not getting any turnovers. He's like, there were opportunities to get turnovers, and we didn't seize them. Obviously, Trey Amos had his hand on one. He talked about the pass rush having their hands on Geno Smith and the ball twice. I know Von Miller had his hand on him once, and then I know Dorrance had his hand on him once and had the hand on the ball, and they didn't get it out. So he said that they have to stress getting turnovers, but he loves the fight, the tenacity, and the way that they're playing defensively right now. So then he got to the questions, and that was all him starting off, just kind of recapping the Raiders game, and then he started off talking about a little bit of the Falcons this week. And he said, look, they don't have, they got a ton of guys that can hurt you, which I just talked about. And he said, Bijan, they put strengths and weaknesses up of every player that they are, focusing in on during the game plan. He's like, there are no weaknesses with Bijan. He pass protects, he runs the football, inside, outside, can catch the football. He does everything. So, yeah, which takes you to the Bijan dilemma. He talked about, how do you play Bijan? How do you stop him? How do you slow him down? And all the things that he can do. And so there is a definite. I've spent the majority of time this week talking about the Falcons and Bijan Robinson in particular. Like, he is their offense, and if you can slow him down, you win. If he gets going, all bets are off. He could still have a great game and they could lose, but it's more likely that they win if Bijan Robinson is getting off. And so we got to slow him down. Point blank, period, end of discussion. He talked about the explosives and how they've come about over the first 3 weeks. And he's like, I have patience for the Malik Heath one against Green Bay where Marshawn Lattimore was in, great coverage, and he thought there was offensive pass interference, which there was, and it wasn't called. He said, but I can live with that. Tightly contested. Look, guys are going to make plays at the NFL. The ones he said he struggles with are the ones where we're not even close. It's busted coverage, non-communication, poor eye discipline, whatever the case may be, and somebody's running wide open, which we had against the Raiders twice in the game. He's like, that's the stuff that doesn't compute for me. The one we gave up against Green Bay to Tucker Kraft, that one, I can't live with those, right? So he talked about needing to clean that up and be better. He said that's on him. He said, one, guys got to do a better job of doing their jobs and understanding what their role is and doing that. And then I got to be better at coaching it and making sure that guys are in the right places doing what they're supposed to do. He talked about Will Harris and the loss there, and he said, it sucks. Will was playing well. He was really starting to get comfortable in what they were asking him to do. And he said, but Revo is a guy that they talked about all offseason. And he said, this is a guy that has earned the right to play. He talked about the one play on 3rd and 1 that he hit Dylan Louie on that forced the 4th and 1 that we ultimately got the stop on and turnover on downs. So he's like, Revo is a guy that we love, and we love his communication. And he said the thing about Revo, and there's this delicate balance, is he's such a pivotal guy on special teams. How do you limit him there, knowing that he may have to play more on defense now, but he's such a big part of what we do on special teams, and that's a little bit of a struggle. That's why they're relying on Darnell Savage, and he talked about Darnell Savage. He didn't talk about Savage the way he talked about Preston Smith last week. He talked about Savage in a way where it sounds like he's going to get in and jump right into the fray in week 4 versus the Falcons. He was like, he's such a smart football player. He worked with um, the pass game coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator Jason Simmons in Green Bay, and Simmons called him when Savage was a rookie in 2019 and told him this is one of the smartest rookies I've ever coached. And he said we've seen it already. He's come in and he already has a really good working knowledge of this defense, having only been here 2 days. So he's very impressed with Savage's knowledge. Now can he put that on the field and make them comfortable putting him on the field? We'll see. But it sounds like it's a lot more promising for Savage to get on the field than it was Preston Smith last week. That's for sure. He talked about late in the game, and he actually chuckled when it was brought up because the back end was, decimated, the injury and them holding guys out because of the lead that we had and not wanting to put guys in harm's way. And I talked about it too. Like, I almost wanted to give them a pass on the Trey Tucker touchdown at the end because there was no one on the field defensively. There was no Trey Amos. There was no Marshawn Lattimore. There was no Will Harris. There was no Percy Butler. It was a bunch of guys that were funny lookings out there. And again, I talked about all guys being all out of position and all kinds of foolishness going on. And he said it was so bad at that point that there was only 3 calls they could make because of the nature of who was out there, guys out of position, guys playing positions that they hadn't practiced at. I mean, you had Antonio Hamilton out there in the slot at one point, had him out wide. You had Tyler Owens in the slot. He was playing safety. He was all over the place. It was a mess. So it wasn't shocking to me that we gave up the big ball over the top late in the game. But he said, doesn't matter who's out there. We got to figure out a way to execute because you can't give that up. And I agree with that. He talked about the JK effect. And he said he wanted Javon Kinlaw last year when he went to the Jets. He tried to lobby for him to be here when he went to the Jets last year. But he said he laughed at the fact that people thought that we overpaid for him and that, he wasn't going to have an impact here. And he's like, because JK has been so dominant, it has freed up Daron Payne to do what he's doing. You can't double Daron no more because you have to worry about JK. You got to pick your poison, right? And that's also freed up Dorrance. And it's like this trickle-down effect. Everybody is allowed to be the best version of themselves because JK is such a handful to deal with. If you don't double him, he's going to win. He's going to collapse the pocket. He's going to get in the backfield. He's going to make a mess of your situation. And so much attention is being paid to him that Payne's allowed to eat. And then Payne being allowed to eat has freed up Dorrance. And all these guys really playing well on the front has allowed Bobby to roam and do the things he's doing. And he also took it a step forward to talk about the impact that that's going to have eventually on Oos. He's like, everybody thinks Oos isn't making plays. Oos is playing fine. He's playing well. He said, but eventually they're going to have to key in on JK. They're going to have to key in on Dorrance. Do you think they're going to keep letting Dorrance eat and have, a sack every game? No. Eventually they're going to double him, and that's going to free up Oos. It's going to free up Payne. It's going to free up JK. And so that's the JK effect, he said. He talked about Preston Smith. He talked about Preston Smith in a much more flattering light. He said, no, he's going to help us. He's a veteran that we feel like can come in and do some really good things. He just has to get into play shape. And again, I don't know if that's this week or not. He didn't necessarily sound as negative as he did last week, but he didn't make any, he didn't sound like he did with Savage, where Darnell Savage sounds like he's playing this week. Preston may be out one more week before they actually bring him up to the active squad, but or make him active on game day. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him get out there this week. He talked about Michael Penix, and he talked about his strong arm and how he has athleticism and more mobility than people give him credit for. And I talked about this. Like, people are down on Penix. Falcons fans are down on him. Yeah, he had a rough go of it. It's the nature of the position. As a young player, you're going to have games where you just don't play well. And that was last week. Our goal is to try to make it 2 weeks in a row. But Penix is going to be fine. He talked about Dorrance Armstrong and what he's doing this year, and it's a lot of what he said in the past. Like, we expected DA to do the things that he's doing right now. We expected him to be like this type of impact player, and we're not shocked by what he's doing. Now that he's got more help around him, he can go be himself. We can move him around. He can do more things, and so they're not shocked. And neither am I. Me and Rio talked about it before the season started that we thought this would be a breakout year for DA. And so far, so good. We got a long way to go. But so far, so good for DA. Um, Joe Whitt talked about left-handed quarterbacks and the impact that they can have on how you call defense and the things that you may have to do to adjust to a left-handed passer. And he always goes back to his days in Green Bay. And he talked about having, Sam Shields on one side, and then, they were playing the Eagles. Their starter got hurt, which was a right-handed quarterback. Probably was Kevin Kolb, more likely than not. Vic came in and they didn't switch the corners, and Vic threw a touchdown pass to the other side of the field where his best corner wasn't. So they had to switch the corners and they took that away. But he said that was one of the things that stuck out to him, is that you got to remember a left-handed quarterback is going to throw the football better to his left, as a right-hand quarterback usually throws the football better to his right. So you have to adjust for that type of stuff. The boots usually go to the left, so you have to be cognizant of that. But they boot to the right as well. You don't want to have tells and things that you do. But a lot of times, if you're going to boot, you want to boot to the strong side of your quarterback. So there's little things like that. And then the ball obviously comes out of his hand differently. There's a different spin on it. We don't catch the shit no way, so it don't really matter if it's right-handed, left-handed. We don't catch the shit no way, so it don't really make a difference. In my mind, at least. Play speed. He talked about with players, and BWAG came up. BWAGs came up in terms of play speed, and he's like, I'm a guy that leans towards veterans. I like veteran players because they play faster. And he said, I don't know what BWAGs' 40 time is. I don't know what it was when he came in the league. I don't know what it is now. But this is what I do know. He plays faster than any, young player, any rookie that comes in here that runs a 4.4. He plays faster because that guy's not going to know where to go. He's not going to know where the ball is going and where the play is going to take him and how to get there fast. BWAG talked about that. He talked about that and explained that a young fella might be faster than him, but he might take 8 steps to get where it's going to take him 3 to get to, right? And so that's essentially what Joe Whitt Jr. was talking about there. He talked about explosive plays with free runners versus open and which are open receivers, and we kind of talked about that already. Like he can't deal with that. He's like, I can't. My brain doesn't compute that. We got to be better. We can't have guys just running all over the field wide open. And so, and he kind of went through each case of what happened. He talked about the boot on the first play of the game for the Raiders, and he didn't get into specifics on who effed up. We tried to go through that in the film study, but ultimately, we could kind of tell it was 1 or 2 players that messed that coverage up. He went through the deep ball to Trey Tucker. I think I know who messed that coverage up, but ultimately he talked about the seam ball to the tight end Tucker Kraft in week 2, and that the Raiders ran the same play. We talked about that on the Commanders Kings. Rico and myself talked about that play and how Revo was the reason that didn't go, and how Noah Igbenogany broke that up because he was about to run with the deep over route and leave that seam ball open again. And luckily enough, Revo was able to instruct him, turn around, go get that seam ball. Because like he said, teams are going to try that. And he said we turned around and ran the same one to Luke for the touchdown. So teams are going to run that every week. We got to be better at it. I'm still not 100% sure we know what the hell we're doing on that concept, but at least it didn't get us this past week. And then he talked about us being first in defensive completion percentage. Like we're not allowing teams to catch the football. So and again, some of this has to do with the Raiders. Some of this has to do with Russell Wilson in week 1. But like Jordan Love was good. He wasn't great against us. He just hit big plays against us. Like it felt a lot worse than what it really truly was. If you go back and watch, like we just gave up too many easy catches and too many explosive plays. But really, we shut them down in the second half for the most part. Sans for that one drive when they had to have it. They got it. You got to give them credit. But he said we're first in defensive completion percentage. Like we're not allowing teams to catch football. And you wouldn't think that with the way our fan base is reacting to Marshawn Lattimore and some of the things that are going on. He said, but this is what happens when you're giving up the big plays that we're giving up. It masks some of the great things that you're doing. We got to be better in that department. We got to clean up the explosive plays, which is very true. Cliff's press conference, thought it was a great Joe Whitt Jr. press conference. And he even apologized to one of the reporters that he got snarky with last week. He was ornery last week. That loss in the way they played, he stewed over that. And you could tell he was pissed off. And I talked about it. That was one of the shows last week. You could tell the team came out with that same intensity, and I figured they would. Cliff's press conference, he started off by talking about bouncing back from Green Bay. Obviously, everybody wanted to get that taste out of their mouth. And he talked about what life without Terry and Noah looks like. And obviously, they had a taste of that in the summertime. So he's a little bit more comfortable than he probably should be with that. But um, you still don't want to be in that space. And they better have Bill if you're going to be in that space. They're going to have to figure some things out because he's going to be a big part of what they probably have to do at the running back position. He talked about the guards in this game, in the guard position overall. Talked about Chris Paul, being in better shape this year, taking advantage of opportunities, and being ready to go. And they were really proud of Chris Paul for how he went out there and performed, and he earned the right to get that opportunity, and he took advantage of it. Sounds like he's going to be starting again this week, is what it sounds like. Andrew Wiley, he said, is a veteran. He started for us at tackle. We pushed him inside the guard a little bit this year, had him all over the place. He's a professional, pros pro, played in the Super Bowl as a guard before, so we know we can trust him, and we like what he was able to provide us with. He talked about next man up mentality. He's like, look, we got that on the offensive line. We got that at receiver. We got that at running back. Like we've had quarterback with Jaden and Marcus, obviously. And it's like, look, this is what we preach. But he said it's all about maximizing your personnel, right? Look, everybody's different. Guys get in the game. How do you best utilize that particular player on this particular snap? This is what I think one of Cliff's superpowers is his ability to look at a guy, identify what they do well, put them in positions to do that, and minimize the things that they don't do well. Which you think that's an easy thing, and it's you should be able to do that as a coordinator. Not all coordinators are created equal, and not all coordinators are willing to be flexible and malleable and adapt and adjust to their talent. A lot of guys have a scheme. You got to run my scheme, and if you don't fit my scheme, then you don't fit on this team, right? And that's not how Cliff operates, and I love that. He talked about having no wristbands for the quarterbacks. And you notice, you look around the league and a lot of guys are flipping that wristband up, reading the play off of it. And Cliff said, I didn't like that when I was playing. And so I don't like looking down in the huddle, like at a wristband, reading off of it. I want to be able to make eye contact with guys in the huddle, etc. I want to be present. So, he said, my calls are a lot less wordy than a lot of others. So, we go tempo. I got them in, I got access to the quarterback's ear in the huddle, with the communication. So I can just spit the play out. It's not hard. So just no wristband, right? He said the Falcons pass rush is a lot better than it's been in past, which we talked about. It's a better unit than it's been. And they've been flying around, which they have. So we got to be very cognizant of what they can do. They got some young guys, Jalen Walker, first round pick. James Pierce Jr., another first round pick, guys that are flying around, Leonard Floyd, aka Gumby, as I like to call him, who can still get off the edge. So they got guys that can affect the game, guys that can be disruptive, and we can't, sleep on their pass rush. He talked about the two tight ends in particular, Ben Sinnott and Colson Yankoff, and their physicality on Sunday, and he said those guys stepped up, especially Ben Sinnott. They wanted to see more physicality from him. They wanted to see him being put in those situations, how he would play. And they felt really good about what he and Colson Yankoff provided them with on Sunday. He talked about Anthony Lynn, gave him some love about, his ability to get the best out of these running backs, former play caller, former head coach in this league. He said he's learned a lot from Anthony Lynn. And clearly, Cliff and Anthony Lynn both went to Texas Tech University. And so, Cliff gave him a little bit of love there. He called it the best university in the world. These guys love their alma maters, right? So, he gave him love on that as well. Talked about Jalen Lane's usage, and he said, look, when we drafted Jalen Lane, he said, I looked at him as a slot guy. I feel like that's what his best usage in the NFL is going to be. But, due to our circumstances, we've had to play him all over the place, and he's adapted well. But he said, ultimately, when we get healthy, we get everybody where they need to be, I view him as a slot receiver, and I think he can be a damn good one in this league. He talked about making adjustments without the key players. And look, you kind of go back to him saying next man up, maximizing guys while they're on the field, et cetera, et cetera. He talked about the Brandon Coleman dynamic, and I thought this was an interesting conversation. He said, look, Brandon Coleman has been hurt a lot, which he has. He played through injury last year, but this year, just like last year in camp, he missed time due to injury. and he hasn't gotten the reps, and now he's playing a different position inside, and it's just like you haven't gotten the reps. You know, your practice habits haven't been the best because you haven't been in the lineup. So you need to reestablish the right habits, get out here, get the reps you need, and then we can feel comfortable putting you back out there. But right now, we just don't think your health coupled with your practice habits have been good enough. That's essentially what Cliff said. You got to get out here. You got to get healthy first and foremost, and then you got to get back to the basics, practicing the right way, doing things the way that we need you to do it so that you can be prepared when the game comes. So I still think there's a place for Brandon Coleman on that line as a starter, but he's going to have to show that, one, he can stay healthy, and two, he can put in the work during the week to make them comfortable putting him in the game. Meanwhile, Chris Paul's going to get these opportunities, and if he plays well, he may not get his job back, but we'll see what happens, right? And then he talked about Deebo Samuel and Jalen Lane on special teams. He said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. With Noah and Terry out, Deebo can't be back here running back kickoffs and shit like that a lot. Like, in my mind, I'm like, you might need Deebo on kickoffs to try to shorten the field to maybe break one for a touchdown. You need him back there, even more so than you would in a normal instance. But on the flip side of that, obviously, you need him on offense too. And without those two, it's the Deebo Samuel show, starring Deebo Samuel, co-starring Deebo Samuel. So I get that too. And you know, I think with Jalen Lane, he's always going to be on punch no matter what. But Deebo, I get it. I totally understand where Cliff, and he said we will have to adjust if Noah and Terry can't go. Terry's not playing this week, and Noah's not playing this week. So we may not see Deebo on kickoffs this week. That's essentially what he told us. We may not see him on kickoffs, which I don't like that, by the way. Now that we've seen how dynamic he can be, I think he needs to be back there because it gave us a spark this past week, and he's so dynamic back there that at any moment's notice he could go. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't put Deebo back there. That's how I feel. But anyway, I digress. Before we get to Behind Enemy Lines, let's get a word from our sponsor, Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. So we're now behind enemy lines, taking a look at this Falcons team. Going to take a look at the Commanders and what they bring to the table, and conversely, what the Falcons do in those same categories. As you can see, the Commanders are 1.5-point favorites in this game. So Vegas is telling you they expect this to be a close game, and rightfully so. Every time these two teams pair up, it's always a close contest. You go all the way back to 21 was the last time, the first time like of 4 straight that we've played the Falcons. I think that was the year with Taylor Heineke and J.D. McKissick, and Terry's down there somewhere, and J.D. catching that ball all the way across the field, running for the pylon and diving and surfing all the way into the end zone, essentially. And that was a close game, probably like a 2-3-point game. The next year was the Deron Payne bat into the air, interception by Kendall Fuller to preserve a game in which the Falcons were dominating in the second half. We started fast, and then the Falcons came on like gangbusters, and that was a close game. I think we ended up winning that game by either 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. So that was a close game. Then the next year was the Jamin Davis, interception late to preserve the victory. That's the game in which Desmond Ridder threw like 3 picks. We had no business winning that game. We also had no business losing that game, but Desmond Ridder turned it over in the red zone, turned it over late on the drive, and that was a close game as well, 1-score game. And then last year, obviously, went to overtime, right, with these guys and won that game on a Zach Ertz walk-off touchdown in overtime. So we were Raheem Morris good clock management away from losing that game and having to need the Week 18 contest versus Dallas to make the playoffs. but instead we were able to win that game in overtime. So these games have all been close, and Vegas is saying, yeah, you without Jaden Daniels, you're a 1.5 point favorite. With Jaden Daniels, we don't know what he's going to look like. We just know that this game's going to be close. And a lot of Commanders fans probably think you're going to just blow out the Falcons. You are not going to just go in there and blow them out. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Washington's doing right now. Total offense, ninth in the league. So that's a nice change from where we were last week. Scoring offense, that's more like it. We were less than 20 points a game last week going into the contest, and then we score 41, and that bolsters your average very quickly. Gets us to top 10 now, seventh in the league. And I think we're going to continue to climb, right? Passing offense, 20th in the league. And that's okay when you're running the ball the way that we're running it. You can't, usually you don't have both, right? Either you're really good at passing, you're really good at running. If you're balanced at both, then they both kind of take a little bit of a hit, so to speak, to combine the two. But right now we're dominating on the ground. So the passing offense obviously is going to take a back seat to that. Sacks allowed, 8 this season. I'm not sure that the Raiders got a sack on Marcus Mariota. They had a chance at one right before the half, grabbed the face mask. I don't know if he was sacked. I think Max Crosby might have gotten to him on that one play where they tried to sift block him and he dove over the running back. But we've done a pretty good job of not taking a bunch of sacks. It feels like, Jaden had some struggles with that earlier, but I feel like we're fine in that department. Rush offense, this is what I was talking about. We're second in the league right now, only behind Buffalo. 157 yards per game. That's why the passing offense hasn't been as dynamic, because we're running the football very effectively. Third down offense, we're 21st in the league. Remember, we were only converting 33.3% going into the game. So we've upped that by 4%, almost 5 percentage points. So that's a great sign. We're trending in the right direction. Get this thing up over 40 with another good performance against Atlanta, and then we'll be going in the direction that we need to. Total defense, 20th overall. And a lot of that is because of the explosive plays we keep giving up. We take those away, as Whitt Jr. talked about. We're totally different defense. Scoring defense, 12th in the league, giving up 19 points. So, look, if we're giving up less than 20 points a game, we're going to win a lot of football games. Point blank, period. End of discussion. A lot of that stems from week 1 against the Giants, giving up 6 points. That's what's got us in that position. But, without the big play against the Raiders late with all our guys out of the game, they probably wouldn't have scored more than 20 points in that game. So, pass defense, 23rd, 229 yards. Again, the explosive plays are what's to blame for that. Sacks, we've got 9 on the season, tied for 6. But we've really gotten after the quarterback. We talked about this in the offseason that we thought it was going to be like by committee. We may not have a guy with 15 sacks, but we could have like 4 or 5 guys clear 7, 8 sacks on the season. And that's kind of the way it feels like we're trending right now. Rush defense, 12th in the league, 100 yards given up per game, 101 almost. And again, a lot of that is supplemented by the quarterbacks and some of these gadget guys. Like, again, week 2 against Green Bay, Savion Williams hurt us on a couple of runs there. So something that we got to continue to work on. But, when the running backs have the football, we've been pretty stout. Third down defense, first in the league. I've been talking about that all week long. I'm so excited about that. 28.57% on third downs for the Commanders. That supplements the fact that we haven't gotten turnovers. You get off the field on third downs, keep giving the ball back to your offense. You're going to win a lot of football games doing that. Time of possession, still not where it should be, but we're continuing to work on that. 23rd in the league at 28 minutes, 23 seconds. And then we had our first turnover of the season. Mariota had the fumble. We still haven't created a turnover yet. We're one of 2 teams in the league who have not forced a turnover yet. So, yeah, I hate it. But the drought continues. Hopefully we can end that drought here in the near future. You go to the Falcons and the ops. 13th in total offense, 338 yards per game, almost 339. Scoring offense, 31st in the league, 14. They're 31st in the league. They don't score. I've talked about the struggles of this offense. Michael Penix is 0-4 when the opposition scores more than a touchdown in a game. So they're struggling right now, mightily. Their one win this season, they scored 22 points, and the Vikings scored 6. So if you can score points, you can beat the Falcons. Passing offense, 19th in the NFL at just a shade under 200 yards. Sacks allowed, only 4 this season, so they're tied for 5th. Michael Penix gets the ball out of his hands quickly. He doesn't take a lot of sacks. So but he will make a mistake trying to get rid of the football. That's where we need to try to take advantage of that. Rush offense, 6th in the league. Bijan is a handful. Tyler Algier is a handful. So this is going to be another one of those tests for this run defense to see how good we are. Third down offense, they're 18th in the league at just a shade under 40%. So our third down defense is going to be tested with a solid third down offense. Not a great one, but they're hovering around league average. Total defense, 2nd in the league in total defense, 227 yards per game. So again, they're no slouch defensively. They fly around on that side of the football, which is why we need Bill, man. If we're not going to have Terry, we need Bill. Scoring defense, 13th in the league. They're right where we are, right? We're giving up 19 points a game. They're giving up 19.7, so they're right there. Again, this is not, a layup. Like, this Falcons team is going to be super competitive. Passing defense, they're 1st in the NFL. Their corners play ball, man. I've been really impressed with the way that they play. We're going to talk more about those guys tomorrow, but those guys are playing, man. Mike Hughes, who was a former first-round pick, sort of a cast-off, like, he's finding his second legs in the NFL, finding his footing in Atlanta. He's playing really good football, man. And I feel like their secondary, they got some young guys out there playing good ball. Billy Bowman and the safety from Notre Dame. Like, they got some guys playing some football, man. Xavier Watts. Like, their pass defense is the real deal. So, again, they're going to be a good test. Sacks, 10th in the league with 8. Again, we got 9, so they're right there. Rush defense, 10th in the league, giving up 96 yards. So that's less than what we're giving up. They're not allowing, teams to really hurt them on the ground. So, again, our strength against theirs. Let's see who wins. Third down defense, 17th in the league. They're giving up almost, 39% on third downs. So we got to try to up our third down offense because we haven't been great this year. So see if we can't, convert some third downs, keep the ball in our possession, that sort of thing in this game. Also, time of possession, 33.5. So they're 2nd in the league. They're dominating time of possession, something that we've struggled at. That's what we can't allow them to do. We can't allow them to hoard the football, keep our offense off the field, that sort of thing, shorten the game. That's what they want to do. We have to make sure that we do not allow them to convert third downs, get those chunk plays, get into a rhythm offensively. And a lot of this stems from Bijan Robinson. He is the head of this Falcon. You cut off the head of the Falcon, the body dies. You have to slow down Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. If you don't, they're going to be able to control the pace of this game, control the clock, and really have us at their mercy, right? And then turnover differential, they're +1. Like, they're not forcing a ton of turnovers either, but they're not giving it away a lot. Like, they were forcing turnovers. They forced like 2 or 3 on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings, and then they gave them all away this past weekend when Penix had the struggles against the Panthers. So, again, they've been forcing some turnovers, but they gave it away a little bit, and they've had their fair share of turnovers, but they're still in the positive. So we have to be careful with the football and not make any mistakes. So that's where we are with the Falcons. We will talk more about them tomorrow and what it's going to take to get the victory against them. This is a good Falcons football team. Not to be slept on, not to be disrespected and looked down upon as if they're food that we are going to go in there and feast off of. Like, that's what we want to do. But ultimately, every time we play the Falcons, it's a close game. And I don't think this is going to be any different. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow when we will get into all of the granular details of how this team can be victorious versus the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday. But until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.